But until you know the things that you need to work on or have been able to create, you'll never know the target market that's going to be best for you.
Being that there are so many great tattoo artists out there, it used to be a lot easier to just get clients if you're a great artist. And now you more so have to advertise yourself because people are buying you in addition to buying your artwork, you know.
Packaging is as important as the product. And the way that you showcase the thing that you take the most pride in is going to be almost more important because that's what's going to invite people in.
Whatever buzzword that is that they have in their head, social media, Instagram, whatever, they view it as just like, oh, I have to post on this thing, not I have to tell people about my product so that they'll know about me and buy stuff from me.
In the tattoo industry, you're not special.
Hey everyone, we're here with Mikey Getz. He wears a lot of different hats. He's a tattoo artist of 20 years. He owns a tattoo studio. He owns the Force of Focus, a couple other coaching businesses. He's very involved with the space. And so we had a great discussion today on mindset, sales, marketing, tattooing, a bunch of shit. It was a great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
A couple of years ago, a doctor told me that if I didn't figure out how to stand up while tattooing, I was gonna need surgery. That's why we adapted this uplift desk. I stand and tattoo, which now my pain has gone down significantly. I get so many questions on what my tattoo bed is, but really it's not even actually a bed. I think as tattooers, we don't really think of the longevity of our careers or taking care of our bodies. You're tattooing for 8 hours or longer sometimes, so it's just really important to invest in tools that'll extend your career. If you'd like to see the equipment you use to make this,
check out the link in the description.
If you wouldn't mind just telling everybody, telling the world kind of who you are and what you do, because I know you got your hands in a bunch of different pies. So I would love to see how you sum that up, because you're juggling a lot.
Yeah, and this is always kind of the fun part because it's always kind of ever changing a little bit. I'm exiting some things, I'm ramping way up on others, but formally I am Mikey Getz. I've been tattooing for about 20, almost 21 years now. I own a tattoo studio in just outside of Des Moines, Iowa. It's in Grimes, Iowa, a huge growing community. Preface that on the Midwest is amazing for tattooing right now. It's insane because we've always been 5 years behind most major cities. So as most major cities are becoming tier 1 areas, we are right in that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And so with the momentum of social media and marketing and all of the access we have to things, plus we have paying clients who value the products that we produce, great artists are doing great things, and we're not really hitting a slow season anymore.
Yeah,
it's been really
awesome.
Cool. With all that being said, huge advocate of faith, family, freedom, finance, and just really utilizing creativity as a superpower.
Yeah.
Also the Force of Focus.
Yeah. Okay. So, whoa. I gotta process everything I just heard. So, tattoo artist, studio owner, obviously family. You got kids, right?
Yep.
How many?
I have one.
Okay,
Yep.
one. All right, well, that's not too bad. No, just kidding. And then
he's 2, so it's still a lot.
That is a lot. Got a fiance, got a wedding on the horizon, and then Force of Focus, and then you mentioned Tattoo Pro. Is that? Am I missing anything?
So Katie and I also do Primal Focus, which is where we work with, as I was saying, we work with couples who they want to build businesses within the household, family business. And so we do a lot of the focus on self, focus on relationship, then focus on business so that everything aligns and you don't start to cross lines, clash, or it's really about like relationship delegation and then utilizing that as your strength to be able to ensure the fact that business is going to grow steadily moving forward.
Yeah, totally. So, man, so much I want to unpack there. But, if you had to put it into like a pie chart and say, like, this is my main thing, this is my secondary thing, these kind of are, obviously, and it changes over time, but like kind of like what is your current focus right now, or like biggest focus is, or like where does that kind of break up?
I mean, it's going to sound cartoony, but my primary focus is my family, man.
Sure.
Like that means everything. As long as I'm nailing that, everything else succeeds. But if I prioritize everything else, my family struggles, and then I'm not successful anyway.
Yeah.
But in the trickle-down effect, I would say it's family first and foremost. It's probably my tattoo career, then the Force of Focus, because I need proof of concept of one to be able to positively grow the other. and then Primal Focus, which is in its fertile stages right now, but we're doing a lot of amazing work with a lot of amazing people. We actually invest in a lot of mentorships for that because we don't believe we know everything, but we are active components to our own growth through the guidance of others. And so people can actually watch us implement these things to see what does and doesn't work. And we can give you real world information about how we've been able to apply these things to how crazy our lives are.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing is everybody has this concern of, I don't have the time. My life's too much of a mess. Prioritization, organization. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I work 10 hours a day because of the 9 to 5, but there's always a way to make it work. It's just about first cleaning the slate before you pile a bunch of stuff on instead of piling a bunch of stuff on, hoping that something's inevitably going to figure itself out.
Yeah, for sure. So, man, again, so much I want to unpack. But one thing that I think about a lot, and I've seen other, not necessarily people in the tattoo education space, but other entrepreneurs and stuff talk about this, but it's, when you've got a business or you've got another business idea, and I'm not a tattoo artist, so I'm not creative in that way, but I feel like entrepreneurship is a creative thing as well. Like there are just so many ideas all the time. And so I know for me, it can be difficult when I have a new idea to like decide like, okay, do I want to chase this or is this like not going to add, to what I'm doing, or is it going to take away from other things? So how do you work through that process when you're coming up with something new or kind of adding to the list of your responsibilities?
Edit and audit, because if I have enough time to dream something up and I can't figure out where it's going to fit, I do a really diligent edit and audit. What are the things that I've done long enough to have proof of concept? It may not be panning out or I've just hyper fixated on it. And now it's just because I want to win. And I think that's a huge anchor for a lot of people also is they will pound the ground and fight through things in hopes that they can prove themselves right instead of just realizing you can innovate, you can pivot, and you can still make everything work really well for you.
Yeah.
I think a huge thing, especially when it comes to the tattoo education space, because there's a huge difference between being a coach and actually being in an education space.
Yeah.
Is you need proof of concept. And one of the things that I started with the Force of Focus, it had nothing to do with actual education on running your systems, running a successful business. My big thing, take the tattoo artist badge off first. All right. What do you need? It's the whole Wizard of Oz complex. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The only way I can make all of these businesses work is if I'm prioritizing my own personal development and my own growth. Because otherwise I'm using all of the hope of success to make myself feel important. If I don't feel important first, none of this shit's applicable or going to be possible anyway.
Yeah.
And that's how really, whether it's the Force of Focus, Primal Focus, me and Brock run Legacy, my own tattoo career. If I don't feel 100%, everything else gets a fraction of my capability.
Sure.
Anyway. And it's all the same system. I can rinse and repeat the same systems to all of it because I have that framework as you and I were talking about earlier.
Yeah, totally. So I think, you made a difference between the coaching and the tattoo education stuff. Mm-hmm. So, for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what the Force of Focus entails?
Yep. So I am not the Force of Focus. I might be the face of it. I might be the voice of it. I may have been the creator of the concept of it. But the Force of Focus is a community of artists. We have 4 members of leadership currently who all educate on their specific zone of genius. I don't want to be a guy who ChatGPTs a bunch and a jack of all trades but a master of none. I want to be able to help the people.
Yeah.
Going back to the take the tattoo artist badge off. Once we figure you out, then marketing, branding, content creation, social media optimization becomes super easy because all you have to do is document the pride you feel as a person and as a provider of a product.
Yeah.
So actually Jesse from Inklink is coming in to help us navigate that end of the ship. Joe Swanson does the Compass Call, which is business software, innovation, infrastructure, talk a lot more about sales strategies in there also to be able to navigate DMs properly. So that's a huge component, been extremely valuable for middle up artists and studio owners. And then even Jared, who came in to work with us in the Force of Focus as a student, is now a leader because his knowledge in financial literacy, financial psychology, and not necessarily about saving money, but investing it properly, whether that's in real estate, crypto, or anything else that's going to be able to make your money work for you. That's kind of the really cool part is tattoo artists don't know the difference between expense or investment.
Yeah.
In either the way we live our lives or what we do with our money. So that's kind of that big, the big ticket for me personally, because that was a big problem with me. When you learn how to make a crap ton of money tattooing and you're like, oh, I'm finally there, then you buy all the stuff. And then a week later, you're like frantic again. So that call really just seals the deal where now your future's set up for you. This isn't just a let's make your next 3 months look really good. Like, what about a year from now?
Yeah.
What about 3, 5 years from now? How are you going to set it up for like legacy financial success? And so we're really trying to give people those tools for, as we said, the education. Coaching, no different than fitness. We can help you know how to lose weight, but once you're done with the coaching, are you going to go right back to your old patterns and habits? You betcha. If you do 75 hard, is day 76 going to be when you house a cake? Probably, unless you've created that discipline to be able to rinse and repeat the process.
Yeah, totally. So it's kind of like a comprehensive all angles approach, but it's for tattoo artists.
Predominantly, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, that seems super awesome, man. It sounds like, I mean, all of that stuff is definitely really needed. You know, some people to more degree in some of those areas than others, but I mean, that is really cool. So is it like, so obviously there's like probably like a community aspect of it too. So is there like a preset like curriculum, or is it just kind of like tailored to the person, or like how does that work?
So what we do is we have 4 calls a week, all of which are live and also recorded. So we have a system that we implement, but we also have modules to get people up to speed because we are consistently going pretty fast paced. And when you have that much information every week coming at you, it's like drinking out of a fire hose.
Yeah.
So there's modules that really give you the ability to comprehend where it is we are, where it is you are, to start doing the work on the back end. So then you can just do it in piecemeal. Do it at your comfort zone. Don't feel like you need to have a bunch of half-built bridges. Make sure that all of these things are aligning. And the reason we designed it the way we did is as self starts to grow and you start to create belief, then your output becomes more sincere and more authentic. Then you can start to run your business more successfully because of the confidence you were able to build. Then you know what to do with your money so that you don't just circle right back around.
Yeah.
And so we've created a low tier entry point for just people who want to come in and they want to sit in a room with people who are all driven and just hungry to change. Because that is another big issue you see in the tattoo industry. There's always that one outlier in the studio that's negative, never wants to support you. You've got the old friendship circle who's always just making jokes about how you're never going to get anywhere or they don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
So this is a room of people who are all just cheering each other on.
Yeah.
Past that, we have obviously different tiers to it. We just opened up the 1-year program where if you excel in the Force of Focus in 1 year, and we can actually gauge the growth you created, you've utilized our SOPs, you understand our software and our systems that we implement, we'll actually reinvest into you and help you open your studio with a fairly small partnership so that we're helping you with these systems and everything is just consistently growing for you. And you have us at your disposal.
Wow, dude, that's killer.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's particularly for studio ownership. Like they're really just, I mean, there's getting to be more coaching and business resources out there for tattoo art. There's still not a lot, mind you, but especially like for studio owners specifically, I feel like there's so few things out there and it's something that people need like bad, you know? I mean, how many studio owners have you talked to that are like, yeah, everything's great. Like for me, it's like just about none. You know?
Well, and it's also like, what's your gauge of great? You know, like
very true. Everybody's
vision of doing well is not living in the dumpster fire, just comfortably leaning against it. Like I'm fine.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's kind of a big thing. Your perception of success is going to be vastly different than someone else's. And I mean, you can see that just in having a conversation with you, because it's very rare I get to have the conversation where two people align so dearly on implementing creativity into business is equally as valuable as implementing creativity into art and design and any canvas you could potentially use. We've had this conversation. I'm a man of faith. I firmly believe that creativity does not come from us. It flows through us.
Yeah.
The minute you think creativity comes from you, you're diluting and depleting your resources. And when you have this belief system that it's all you, you're the one doing it, and nothing's refilling that cup, eventually you hit artist block. You're just kind of tapped out. But when you have the creativity, how you implement it, and all of the big dreams that you have, everything you guys have been able to do with Eden, that's creativity no different than it is for the tattoo process.
Yeah.
You know, and so when an artist can put their creativity everywhere else, they become such a significant member of this like society, civilization of this world, because everything requires your creativity. It's not this or that, it's both and.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really want to give people the tools to know how to do. When you work on you, your life becomes art. Do that.
Yeah.
And then see how far you can take literally everything you do.
Yeah. I definitely agree that that's kind of like the building block to everything. If you improve yourself, then everything else kind of comes with it.
Yeah.
Whether that's the current effort at that time or not. But I think that's great to always be able to just have that foundation to fall back. It's kind of like being in a relationship, right? You can't really love somebody appropriately until you love yourself,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a really good point to bring up is you and I talk about marketing on both of our platforms. What's marketing other than just entering a new dating pool, in a sense, getting to know your client from a dating perspective? It's like when you go out to meet a girl or a guy at the bar or the library, wherever you're doing your shopping, do you go out and you say, yeah, you'll do? Or do you have these expectations and these certain guidelines that you want to be able to meet in that partner?
Yeah.
So you're going to ask the right questions. You're going to get to know them on a bit more of a personal level. Finding clients is the exact same way. Why do we look at finding a partner or even a friendship circle any different than we do finding the right clients that we can serve to be able to create the most profound impact?
Yeah. I like that, Stan. I've never thought about it like that, but that's really great, especially when you add in that, it's being a permanent form of art. It's so personal. That really it requires a much higher level of trust than just, buying a T-shirt, or something like that. So there's definitely that other level there, but that's a really interesting marketing perspective. I like that a lot.
We had this conversation in the forest, and I'm pretty, I don't want to say graphic, but I'm kind of an aggressive dude. I come out hot, And so the conversation we have is, how many of you married the person you tried to smash on the first date? It's rare. Why are you doing it in your DMs? You know what I mean? You need to wine them, dine them, nurture them, make them see that you are a valuable individual, because it's not about your worth.
Yeah.
It's about your value. And the way that you sustain a quality relationship comes from the amount of value that you can not only present, but the amount of value you see in that person.
Yeah.
No different than marketing in your relationship. You have to create a know, like, and trust factor. If
Yeah.
it's just know and like, it's doomed. Once you hit that trust factor, that's how you really start creating like long-term client retention or relationship retention. And again, this is why Force of Focus and Primal Focus is just the same system.
Sure.
So that's why it's really easy to do a lot of things at the same time, because I did a lot of me work. I wouldn't be able to have the woman that I love had I not done this work. I wouldn't be able to have the networking opportunities had I not done this work. I wouldn't be able to have the business. And it all stems from the same stuff. So if you master this, you can do all that.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think there are a million directions that we could go. But one thing that obviously I do a lot of marketing content, and then, more, that's the kind of getting people in the DMs or in the email side of things. And then, from there, there's the sales process of it too. So maybe we can kind of go down that rabbit hole. Okay. But I like what you said about, the marketing. And one thing that I've talked about a lot is, I just mentioned the trust factor, but also, with the industry being that there are so many great tattoo artists out there, it used to be a lot easier to just get clients if you're a great artist. And now you more so have to advertise yourself because people are buying you in addition to buying your artwork,
So the one thing that I've come to find is, like you had said, people aren't shopping just for art, they're shopping for the artist. But the preface here is, where are you in your career? Because if people are shopping for art, you're going to be pretty much going to turn and burn tattoo studios, flash shops, people who are just working on their flash all day long. That's because you're selling your art. When you start to sell yourself as the artist, it has to come with some level of significance, professionalism, a personal brand, something that client can get behind and know that they can relate to.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about it being a luxury service or a luxury product we provide. And that's why people think the economy's the problem. But people are still making money and people are still investing money, and tattoos are nothing different than any other investment as long as you're working with the right caliber of clientele.
Yeah.
So what it boils down to is, how can you show people that your brand represents something that they want to associate themselves with? Because tattoos, past the art, are a memory and experience that's going to be shared forever.
100%.
So if you sell a luxury product and you are a middle up artist, you need to become a luxury provider for a luxury consumer. Then all of a sudden, you're not going to have to worry about cutting yourself off at the knees on the way you price your product, because you're targeting the right market. And there's a million different things we can talk about how to be able to do that. And it really does come back down to the fundamentals. If you believe the most valuable thing about you is the product you provide, you're missing the mark completely. Because you hide behind that. That's why you see so many people just like, here's my tattoo, and they're not going to let you see anything about them because they think the only value they have is the art that they produce.
Yeah.
Which I get, sincerely, artists have dedicated their entire lives to have one thing that 99% of society can't say they do.
Yeah.
But you've neglected everything else that makes people sincerely valuable. And so, I'm going to keep circling around to the development stuff, but if you take time on your mind, if you take time on your body, on absorbing knowledge, your creativity outside of the product you produce, your business, your relationships, and your spirituality or faith, then no one can compete with who you are because those are the things that are going to make you unique. In the tattoo industry, you're not special. And that's a hard truth and something that's gotten me in a lot of trouble for saying, but through high school when everybody said, you're so talented, then you enter an industry full of other people who heard they were so talented, you are now rendered average.
Yeah, yeah.
It's everything else that's going to make you unique. Otherwise, you're just kind of a number.
Yeah, yeah. I can see how that would be something that would be hard for artists to kind of come to terms with, is to say that, I am valuable outside of my art because for a few reasons. One, they spent most of their time working on their art. Also could feel a little bit, arrogant to say like, I have value. I mean, it could seem like that, but I totally get it. But like as far as like working on yourself and delivering that to a client to give them more reasons to book with you or to raise that value, like what do those deliverables look like?
I guess it's case by case. You know what I mean? Because if everybody's running the same thing, then it's fabricated because nobody's going to be into the same stuff. Not everyone has neglected the same elements. But when you really take a good hard look at yourself, this is a practice I think we've all heard, but probably never implemented. Take a good hard look at yourself and don't worry about your positive affirmations. Worry about your affirmations. Be honest. When you realize there's things about you that you've neglected for long enough, said you didn't have the time to do, and then you document the process, not for the gram, but for your own gauged growth to see how much momentum you've created, then those things become your new natural habits. And you want to feel as like you're going to become as proud to share the person you're becoming as you are the art that you're producing. And as the artist, you need to be willing to be able to showcase the things that you have value in. So we go through this process in the Force of Focus where we start creating our own ideal avatar. I learned this practice by working with an agency where we coached coaches for the fitness space to be able to create online platforms. And I was the guy who helped everyone figure this out. But until you know the things that you need to work on or have been able to create, you'll never know the target market that's going to be best for you. So we go through the process of designing who is our ideal client in a perfect world. 90% of the time, the clients we want to work with are on a different level than us. They have different values. They're in a different price bracket. They have different family dynamic, income range, interests. So when we start to realize that, we're like, well, I want those things too. So, okay, let's start putting a little bit of work into you becoming that person, because now you're going to be able to relate to those new markets. And again, marketing is not the content you produce, because that's just kind of chasing trends. Marketing is the buyer psychology. You need to understand your ideal market
100%.
and then become relatable to them from a psychological level. So, we could walk through this whole thing and make a 5-6 hour podcast, but I think the exciting part is sitting down with a pen and pad, figuring out what it is you love about yourself, figuring out what it is that could use improvement, and then do that stuff, document it, don't show it, just document it. And then you have no different than the weight loss journey before and after.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's how you're going to relate to a new market. You just let them know who you are and the things you take pride in based on the accolades that you've been able to create.
Yeah, totally. So I feel like the tattoo industry is like in its infancy in so many ways. And I feel like there are so many things that are from other industries that are just common practice, but maybe not talked about or acted on as much. And one of those I feel like is like the avatar, or like the ideal client. And I feel like that's something that I've personally heard people talk about like very rarely. So, I mean, let's say you're a tattoo artist and you've done the work and you're starting to feel like you have that personal side of things. You can offer that to people. How would you recommend that they walk through like kind of finding who that ideal client might be?
Oh man, there's so many different ways to go about this, but you're always going to come back to the same place. We all have had that client that was like, that's the one. But how well do you know that person? You know what I mean? You probably spend a lot of time relating to them in the chair. You probably spend a lot of time having a good quality conversation. Try to remember that conversation you had. Think about the interests that you completely aligned on. Think about the things that they were into that they said that helped them psychologically paint the picture of the tattoo they wanted. You know, if you can create that and document the things that they were into, you get a little bit closer to your ideal avatar.
Yeah.
Then you start thinking about all of the things that you want to be able to do more frequently based on the experience you can provide. So what was it about the experience with this individual that stood out to them? You know, was it the way that you communicated with them? Was it the way that they were greeted coming into the studio? Was it the way that you actually just sat down and listened and took notes? Was it the way that you were willing to make little adjustments to the art to be able to suit their needs? What was the conversation that you had, and how did you respond to the reasoning behind this tattoo?
Yeah.
Because it is all about the client. You know, after you get through the you thing, it has to go into them.
And I also think outside of going to find your ideal avatar, they also start to find you when you start to show more of who you are. And those right people that vibe with that, they just end up coming to the door, you know?
Yeah.
And that makes the rest of the process easier too, because we can get into sales and stuff in a second here. But like, if you have somebody that you really vibe with and they're really vibing with you, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Well, so what's your perspective on how artists view Instagram being the primary like shopping platform for artists? Where do you think artists go wrong with just the way that they look at Instagram?
I think they don't. It's marketing is what it is. And I think so many of them just don't view it like that. Mm-hmm. Whatever buzzword that is that they have in their head, social media, Instagram, whatever, they view it as just like, oh, I have to post on this thing, not I have to tell people about my product so that they'll know about me and buy stuff from me. And it sounds weird to talk about buying or selling tattoos, but that's
what it is.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like even just kind of shifting that mindset into looking at it as a tool and not just like this chore that you have to do, or like, oh, I know that I have to do this thing. Like, I feel like that can just completely shift how you think about it. And then also, you know, how you go about it and your performance on it as a result, because if you can see at least the intent behind it, you're probably going to like it more and you're probably going to be better at doing it. Yeah.
Well, and I think a huge component is a lot of people look at their portfolio on Instagram simply as that. So it looks more like a thrift shop than it does a storefront.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're matching these really low barrier entry points of, no, I just got to post something. You know, there's no consistency to it. The page isn't put together. You don't have a brand package put together. I mean, a brand package it's easy. You're an artist. You already know it. You just don't know the terms.
Yeah.
It's your logo, it's your icons, it's your mood board, it's your color scheme or your palette. Because even at our studio, you have your blue light down here. Each artist in my studio has a particular light. We're like the tattoo artist Ninja Turtles. And that really just helps people stay on brand.
Yeah.
And as you do this, it starts to professionalize your page. But if you give a tattoo 100% of your effort and the packaging of that tattoo on Instagram 25% just to match the low barrier entry point of, okay, I did the thing, then you're doing your art a huge disservice, you know? And that's the important part is look at any clothing company, you know what I mean? Even Bobby Johnson, you know what I mean? Packaging is as important as the product. And the way that you showcase the thing that you take the most pride in is going to be almost more important because that's what's going to invite people in. If you just have some shitty background of your tattoo studio, a paper towel that's just green soap to high hell underneath of it, then your packaging is just off.
Yeah.
Because a client's eye isn't trained the way an artist's is. So what's beautiful right here is going to be completely diluted by what's all around it. And so once you figure that stuff out, all of a sudden your packaging is key. All of a sudden you're going to start to notice a lot more of an uptick in engagements because you're training the clients to look at the thing that you take the most pride in.
Yeah.
And then that increases value.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not just the packaging is definitely a big part of it too, but if it's like you said, it's kind of like thrift shopping. If you go into a high-end store, it could say like Gucci, but that's too high. Let's say like Zara, where it's like, middle of the road, solid clothing, but like they've got like a presentation around it, right? Yeah. Everything in there is, they've thought out how they want to model that. And so even if you're not like, oh, I'm going in the store because it looks tight, if there was none of that and you just, put the clothes in a vacuum, you may be interested, you might not, but it's the whole experience, right? That kind of, sounds weird to say lures you in, but that's part of it, You
could also imagine, and this is going to sound aggressive, but you can envision the people who are going to shop at one or the other. So if you're wondering why you're getting people who are always heckling with you, if you wonder why you're getting inconsistent clients who will just ghost you in the middle of a conversation, who only want to know how much it's going to cost, or who never quite go to booking and they just drag you through the mud, look at how you're presenting yourself. Because if you look like a thrift shop, you're probably targeting a low barrier clientele, which, don't get me wrong, there's a client out there for everyone. But know where you're at, know where you want to go, and adjust accordingly.
Those moments that really change your entire career trajectory as a tattoo artist? When you got one piece of advice or learned one technique from somebody you looked up to? Instead of waiting or hoping that your next one or even your first one comes along, you can actually put yourself in a room where these moments happen all weekend long. The 2025 Eden Summer Symposium is a 3-day, high-impact educational event where some of the best tattoo artists in the world will teach you the skills, techniques, and strategies that help set them apart. You'll get 8 seminars covering everything from building your clientele to technical application to finding your own unique style, plus 2 bonus presentations we haven't even announced yet. This is an incredible opportunity to learn directly from artists who have built incredible careers in this industry. And not just from the stage. They'll be at the venue all weekend, meaning you can ask questions, get feedback, and gain the kind of insights you can't find anywhere else. And thanks to our sponsors like Bishop and Inkies, we're giving away thousands of dollars in free product, plus insane raffles with high value prizes. This event always sells out, so don't wait. Check the description below for more info.
As far as presenting that product, obviously everybody can do it a little bit differently because everybody has their own brand, their own personality, but what are some things that you kind of recommend as far as making the iPhone box, right? Yeah. The iPhone's great inside, but the box, you don't want to throw it away because it's so great,
There's a couple different ways to do it. For Instagram, whether people like it or not, stop thinking of it as social media and start looking at it as business media. This is now a business platform for you. It has nothing to do with social. Get rid of that thought, because when it's social, all of a sudden you're absorbing. When it's business, all of a sudden you're presenting. And so that has to be a little adjustment that's made. Start with your biopic. Is it going to be clean, clear, and something that's going to make you look like you're enjoying yourself? Or are you going to, no offense to myself, but are you going to look like a dude who's just not impressed? You know what I mean? Because I have this weird habit of just seeming like a guy who's just fed up with stuff. You know what I mean? And you can't put your finger on it. I'm just over it. And but that's okay because it works with my brand in a sense. I'm, believe it or not, a pretty happy-go-lucky, playful guy.
Yeah, you seem like it.
But my delivery for the Force of Focus is different because I take the stuff very seriously, in contrast to my delivery in Michael Getz Creations or my personal life, because of the fulfillment that I feel for it, and that works. The reason you don't see my tattoo stuff on my Force of Focus page isn't because I don't tattoo. It's because I don't want to target 2 different markets on the same page. Plain and simple. You know what I mean? But so the best way to really understand your packaging is one, your biopic has to be inviting to the client you want to work with.
Yeah.
Two, your bio information is equally as important. And I'm a huge advocate in don't say things like deposit required or say you're hourly in your bio, even though you think it's a vetting process. It really cuts off the ability of you being able to provide enough value for numbers to make sense anyway.
Yes.
And that's how we get into sales, but we'll get there. And as you do that, and I hate emojis, but use emojis as bullet points, all right? Clients, I think all humans look at our Instagrams like people look at art as the S-curve. If you design a painting the proper way, there's an S-curve to it where the eye's immediately forced to work around things. And so the emojis really help somebody's eye psychologically go back to the next line of information, which then funnels them down to the highlights.
Yeah.
Have your highlights dialed in so that people that's your portfolio. Your highlights are a really good portfolio for people to see. These are client testimonials or client reviews. This is part of my experience. This is information you can utilize for, my favorite thing, pre-care for skin before a tattoo process.
Yeah,
Nobody
nice.
discusses it, but it's extremely important.
Totally.
Oh yeah, and then whether it's black and gray color, realism, hyperrealism, geomech, whatever you're doing, but use your icon as little tiny things because that line is going to make people decide pass or fail if they're going to continue to scroll. Now the rest of it, that's your resume, not your portfolio.
Sure.
That's where people get to know you as the individual so they know that they're willing to invest in what it is you do for them.
Yeah.
So packaging at a really simple concept.
Yeah, 100%. And I say a lot of that same stuff when I'm teaching tattoo artists about marketing, but it really is so important because when somebody lands on your page, however they found it, whether it's, found it on the For You page or whatever, like they're going to make a split decision of whether to follow you or not. And if that presentation isn't great, it happens so fast. Yeah. And it's not even like you don't even do this intentionally. I make fun of Deanna all the time because you might have experienced this if you're ever watching somebody scroll the Reels feed or the TikTok feed. And, obviously hooks are kind of a different conversation, but like I'll be watching her scroll TikTok and a video will start and less than a second after she swipes past, I'm like, you don't even know what that video was about. And she's like, no, I just knew it was going to be bad. And so swipe back to it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's not interesting. Yeah. Sometimes it's interesting, but very, very rarely. And it's really the same stuff when somebody goes to your page. I mean, if they're not drawn in right away, nothing against them, nothing personal, but they're coming out of it.
So that's actually a really fascinating thing to bring up because on the opposite end of that coin, what is it immediately that makes people decide this is interesting without even hearing the context of it? You know what I mean? Because it's really easy for a person to decide it's not for me. And usually they already know what they're into. The algorithm already has them pretty well figured out. Yeah. So it's going to be feeding them things so that it can get to know you. Instagram and TikTok have a really good system of they're going to give you 9 things you love, 1 thing you hate to gauge where your attention's going to go. So what are the things that your consumer, that your client are going to be interested in? If you know your client well enough, these are the things that's going to be the hook. The hook is going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, very true.
And so as artists, not a lot of people are good at spoken word right out of the gate. So there's options. Visual hooks are as important as verbal hooks. Why do you think 5 years ago you always saw the video of the guy talking about things that didn't relate to anything you cared about, but there's this little car just racing and you're just waiting for it to crash? You know what I mean? Exactly. You didn't care what this guy was saying to you, but I want to know where this car's going and how poorly it's going to go in the end.
Yeah.
Those are all visual hooks. All right, so you can do the same thing, maybe and ideally less cringy, but the visualization, Instagram is a visual platform. It's just advanced from what it used to be.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that clients care about your ink drips or you peeling the carbon. Those things just don't relate.
Yeah.
But there are things that do, and a lot of people are using the trending videos where something comes flying at the camera, then all of a sudden it's you. Yeah. You've already got them hooked at that point. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it sucks, but it works. Is it trendy? Sure. Is it influencer? You betcha. But there's a really fine line between being an influencer and being a person of influence. Yeah. It all just depends upon the context in which you're willing to provide.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think too, I feel like a lot of tattoo artists get lost and, not looking at it like marketing.
Yeah.
not understanding that like, no, it's not a hook just because it's viral or because it's trendy. It's because it gets people's attention.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of everything we're doing with that platform,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I think that that's a big part of it too. Damn, totally lost my train of thought when I was going there. Oh, I just feel like everything is so nuanced, from the hooks of Instagram reels to the captions you write. And I mean, it can be overwhelming at sometimes.
Yeah.
Definitely, you know?
And I think that's what's awesome about what you guys are doing. I mean, shameless plug, what we're doing. And there's a lot of other people out there who are getting to know the artists that they're working with. There's a huge difference there. Getting to know the individuals and what it is that is working and genuinely what it is that isn't working, that's going to be the deciding factor of pass or fail. You know, because each individual person is going to come in from a different perspective. But we need to know what has worked and what hasn't worked to know what information to give you. This can't be cookie cutter.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and it's exhausting and it's extremely time consuming to get to know each individual that comes in to work with us, or all the artists that we bring in to work at the studio. Even as guest artists come in and we do guest spots all the time, I'll sit down for 2 or 3 hours with each artist that comes in and I'll help them design out their systems. But it needs that nuance. It needs that individual approach because, I mean, the tattoo industry, you said it first, it's in the fertile stages. If you look at every other industry that has scaled in the past 10 to 20 years, the same thing happened where it became just a growing tower vertically where everyone patiently waited on ground level to be told what to do, hoping that they're going to be the lucky one to be called up to the top floor.
Yeah.
But no one takes the stairs until they figure out where it is they are and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So again, that goes back to the difference between coaching and education. Education is the stairs to the escalator, to the elevator, to the top. And as all these things continue to change, you could be one of the best artists around and still be the last one to the dance because of whether it was pride or uncertainty or just scatterbrain nonsense. But there are resources where you can just get all of the things you're ever going to need to know, and it continuously it's just provided directly to you. A lot of people invest in their art, but they don't invest in the thing that's going to get them the money and the clients, you know? And I think that's kind of I say it's crazy, but I was that once upon a time.
Sure, yeah.
I am obsessed with investment now, like personal investment. I have coaches for everything. I just spent like $3,700 on a 1-hour call with one of my mentors, only to be told a bunch of crap that I already knew and to be held accountable to actually doing the thing that I had been fighting against for the past months. It's like, most valuable call I've ever gotten.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? Because just by doing the thing, most of it, you already kind of know. You have a comprehension of the value and the importance of. You just don't have the framework to know how to be able to do it in a chronological order.
Yeah.
And so that's where education comes in. Higher education produces more significant results in all things.
Yeah, totally. And I also think the personalization aspect of it is so important. And that's what when I talk to studio owners, that's what I start out all of my seminars with. I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, where are we trying to end up? Because not everybody's the same. I can talk about, the systems that we use here, and I can talk about systems for working with 12 artists and for, having help to do everything. But like, if that's not what you're trying to do, if you just want to have a cool space where you come in, do your thing and leave, then we're going to have a way different conversation, and there's nothing wrong with either one of them. Right. But, everybody is a little bit different.
Yeah.
That being said, I do think a lot of these things, it's like, it's not going to hurt to understand marketing psychology or sales psychology, or, I think that that's a vehicle to getting you wherever you want to go. Were you going to say something?
I was, but I'm going to let you finish first.
I was just going to say, that being said, there does have to be a degree of authenticity there and, that personal touch to it, because if it's not going to translate anyway,
I think to get to the level that you have as Eden, as this umbrella, which is fucking cool. What I have with the Force, with Legacy, with my own personal growth, all that stuff, there's still fundamentals. Point blank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you want to break it down to brass tacks, know your product, know your client, know your client's interests, also know their fears, and know how to sell stuff to them. You know, like you've already got the tattoo stuff figured out. So knowing your product isn't knowing how to do the thing.
Yeah.
It's knowing what makes it specific and significant. And then you have to know who you're trying to sell to. You have to be pretty thorough on who you're not trying to sell to also, because I think it's extremely important nowadays. And then just have like strategies in place for sales, for communication, for lead nurturing, which is just like how frequently in which you can maintain a quality conversation with people, because the whole I'll respond to DMs next Tuesday between 4:30 and 4:38 thing just isn't panning out very well, because when people have this many options,
They've moved on
it's
already.
first of the races. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about I probably will make a story about it later today. But
Yeah.
on my way in, and I was doing inquiries this morning, just with the CRM switch, I've just been like, just kind of getting back into that a lot more, just so I can like understand the process. But we're also tweaking a lot of things on our end. Like I feel like our booking system has been great for a long time. I always feel like it could be better. So I'm just getting my hands dirty again, being like, all right, let me see what needs tweaking here. And I cannot tell you how many clients are like, thank you for getting back to me.
Yeah.
And it's not just because like they're just saying that. It's like, no, like they could have sent inquiries to 5 other studios, and hopefully they all get back to you, but probably at least one of them is not going to get back to you at all. And then this is another thing that I think is great with us, and it could be great with you, when you're working with clients, is I can almost guarantee out of those 5, like we're going to get back to you the fastest.
Yeah.
And by then, if we've exchanged a few messages, if we talked on the phone, like you're not thinking about those other studios anymore. So and we could talk about this specifically forever, but there's so many little things that like, and this is just regular business stuff, right? Regular business stuff. If somebody's like, hey, I want your product, you can't be like, okay, well, we'll talk about it next week.
We'll circle back.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, come on, like buy it,
So here's my question to that. How do you get back to people so quickly?
So part of it, obviously we've got a huge team here, and part of it's automation too. But I think, when I'm explaining this to other tattoo artists, obviously a lot of them are kind of the solo thing. And so it might not work for everybody. I do recommend that most artists have a booking manager of some sort, because you're tattooing 8 hours a day. But if you're not, you can introduce these little quick wins with the client to where like, even if you're not like, hey, here's what it's going to cost, here's the quote, pay this deposit. Even if you're like, hey, thanks for reaching out, I'm doing this right now, I will get back to you at this time.
Yeah.
Because then like they can still go find somewhere else, but then they at least know that like there's something in the near future where they're going to hear from you, and that connects like them with that path.
You're moving the ball down the court. Here's kind of my thing. If you want to run a successful business, find someone who will do the $20 an hour work so that you can do way more of the $200+ an hour work. It's I know it's scary, and a lot of people are like, well, I just can't afford it. Well, again, that's because you don't understand the difference between expense and investment, because a really good assistant is not an expense. It's an investment. If you have the right person doing it, that actually frees up your time and your focus, predominant focus, because tattoo artists are prone for being scatterbrained anyway, and we will always go to the last fear, not the closest success, if we don't have somebody we can trust in place. So how do you find someone you can trust? You have to know the system you want them to run so that you can train them properly at a faster rate.
Totally.
I can tell you with proof of concept, I have hired people who were amazing at what they did, but what they did didn't apply to what it was I needed. And without a proper SOP and leadership in place, they were going to have to figure it out themselves, which would slow down my growth. Is that a them fault or a me fault? That becomes a me problem super quick.
Totally.
So yes, even if right now you're tattooing twice a week and maybe $500-600 a day on a good day. Now this is, a lot of people are stuck there.
Yeah.
Cool. Then hire somebody for 2 hours, like 2 to 3 hours a week at 20 to 30 minutes a day to just make sure they're staying in your DMs and responding to it. If you're only getting a couple different messages periodically, or you need somebody to go in and engage with your ideal avatar, go onto their page, like, comment, shoot them a DM, be like, I love that picture that you posted of you and your family, you out doing the fishing, you puking off the Ferris wheel, whatever like they're into. Have them engage. It's a super easy system. It's $20 an hour. The likelihood of them converting at least one of those people into a paying client to cover their overhead is super likely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I tell everybody the same thing, because, and especially I work mostly in the studio owner space, but so many of them, they don't have a booking manager or a content creator or whatever it is, and that's totally fine, but they're like, oh, I can't afford somebody. And I totally get that. But you kind of have to find that fine line before it's like, okay, I can't afford this right now, but if this is the right person, the money that they're going to be bringing in is going to pay for itself, and then I'm going to be able to use that to develop them or bring in more people or whatever. And if nothing else, you hate doing that shit. So you get some of your time back. And what's that worth to you, right?
Yeah.
That just not having to do that. Yep. So I honestly, I can't recommend that enough. Obviously you don't want to go broke, but like sometimes it's just, you got to just invest in it before you think you can afford it. And here's what I tell people too, like you can pay attention to like what the results of that are getting.
Yeah.
But also to do this, you have to understand what your results are, before that. So you've got to have an idea of how many inquiries you get, how many new appointments are you bringing in. And if you at least have that baseline, it's super easy to compare and say, okay, when I made this big change, these are the amount of new clients I'm bringing in. This is the amount of revenue that I was making that's higher than it was before. Is this worth it or not?
Yeah.
And then if it's still lower, is that peace of mind or that just not having to do that thing, is that worth it for you,
And that's also the importance of kind of having all the systems in place and knowing your financial literacy. Because as money comes in, you're not realizing that you're becoming more successful, you're more financially secure. You just so happen to wind up with more Amazon packages showing up at your doorstep. You know what I mean? So having these things in place, one thing that we continuously try to implement, we live under our means. But for the things that we create that's overhead, we invest the difference. You know what I mean? So every month I think we're putting, and people get scared of this number, but every month we're probably putting $8,000 to $12,000 into different investment vessels or packages, whatever it is we're getting into at the time. And the reason that's important is because of the way the world's going right now. I would way rather invest and know that my future is going to be secure than worry about what it is I just kind of want, or the next trip I can take, or what kind of immediate gratification I'm looking for. The future is always going to be the future until you get there. And if you are not prioritizing now to then you're always going to be stuck at the exact same place forever. And that goes for who it is you're hiring. I've kind of double dipped, and I figured out a really cool system. I have my videographer come in while I tattoo, and I just rip content while I tattoo. I don't have to dedicate any additional time to it. This helps in a few different ways. One, he will record me doing my consultation process, where it's me sitting down and just asking questions and listening to a client, taking notes, drawing right there in front of them. He'll film me greeting people at the door. Do you know what performs way better than ink drips and carbon peels?
People.
You interacting with people.
100%.
You know what I mean? And so it's like those things work really well because I don't have to add extra time. And those are the things that are getting the clients to pay closer attention.
100%. Yeah, man. I don't want to go too back into it, but what you just said about interacting with people versus the ink caps, like that is like the epitome of like understanding psychology, marketing psychology. And it's not complicated, right? But like, I feel like so many artists, they get stuck on like, oh, I need a videographer. And, some people do. Some videographers also understand that marketing psychology side of it, but a lot of them don't. And they're making these gorgeous cinematic shots. It's a beautiful video. It's going to bomb on Instagram because like when somebody is deciding like, do I want to get tattooed by you or not? The video quality might play a factor, but really like they don't give a fuck about the ink caps or the slow-mo shots of you tattooing. If it is a really cool shot, like a macro shot of the needle, then that's interesting, right? Yeah. But there are so many things that's like it's just not going to move the needle on whether somebody's going to interact with that post, let alone book with you, right? And honestly, I think the content stuff is another great example of just like, deciding like, is this worth it? And then also like prioritizing like what you need next to get to that next level of like, maybe, all right, I'm going to start with a booking manager or a social media manager. After that, if that starts going well, maybe I can get a videographer in here 1 or 2 days a week. And so I also think, I feel like I've caught myself at seminars in the past, like, because my first seminars, I just, and I'm an open book, so I just talk about all the stuff we do, and I talk about all the people I have and stuff like that. And I feel like in the beginning I would do that, and people were like, oh, well, you have this and this and this. Like, I can never get to that level. I'm like, okay, but like, it didn't start like that. Like, when it started, like, I was doing all the inquiries for everybody, and and that same method that I talked about before, like, when I hire somebody new, I don't necessarily feel like I'm like financially ready to do something like that, but also I know that it's going to be an investment back into my time or the artist here or the business. So it's grown a lot over time.
There's a huge element to your risk threshold and tolerance too, though. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing that if you can just kind of pivot your belief systems, every artist I know has a sky high risk threshold. It's just putting themselves in the wrong positions because they don't really have like a purpose or a plan. When you can, all right, for instance, I am an ex-alcoholic drug addict who's been to prison. My risk threshold is pretty high. Am I the same degenerate? You fucking betcha. The difference is I just implement all of my psychopathic babble and behavior into things that are going to produce results. All right, so let's be honest here. It has nothing to do with me being better off. It has to do with me being no different than everyone else, only having a plan.
Yeah.
The thing that people shit the bed on is they just don't stick to the plan. They allow immediate gratification and urgency to produce a result take charge of them just seeing it through to the end. Just follow the plan. You know what I mean? And that's a huge thing. Everyone has the potential of doing this. And take it or leave it, but business isn't that hard. It just takes belief and a risk threshold, and you have to be disciplined. And the thing that you lack isn't the business knowledge, it's the discipline to acquire the business knowledge and implement.
Yes.
Once you get it into a system, business is super easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It becomes a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like running businesses, building businesses is so much fun because, multiple sources of income, you get to see what it is you're made of. People are going to say, how did you do this? You're going to be able to prove a bunch of people wrong who didn't think it was possible. And as a creative, kind of a friggin' superhero once you've done that. And this goes back to the creativity as a superpower thing. But if you've already decided, I hate business, then you're kind of a hobbyist with a cool talent than you are like a successful tattoo artist on the path to any world you've ever wanted to create.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, like I was talking about thinking of social media or Instagram as marketing. I think we even need to take a step back and think of tattooing as a business because you have a service that you're selling for money. Unless you're doing it for free, like you own your own business, and any business has to market, has to sell, and they've got to have a good product, a good offer to give to people.
What is it that makes your business? Is it the product you provide or the people who pay for the product? You know what I mean? If you don't have clients or anyone like beating at your door, you don't really have a business. You're just it's a sad reality, but years ago, it wasn't hard, but it was easier because people didn't have so many options. As long as you weren't the worst option, you'd eventually get to do at least one of the butterflies.
Yeah.
Where nowadays there's a lot out there, and shopping for a tattoo artist from a client perspective is like finding something on Netflix. People just want to not make the worst decision.
Yeah.
So how do you position yourself to be the one-off, to be the show everybody wants to see? You're in luck because the bar is set super low. You know what I mean? Look around your community. How angry are you that everybody else isn't good but doing better?
Yeah.
And they're not trying any harder than you are. They're struggling with the same problems, the same anti-social media, the same lack of marketing. Everybody's doing all of the same stuff. And I think I either text this to you or I was going to, where I think a huge important topic to tap into is success is the new counterculture. 10 years ago, tattooing was counterculture, and that's what made it so attractive until it gets convoluted with everyone wanting to do it and wear them. Now, you're just kind of a dude who does tattoos for people who just kind of want to be covered in tattoos. What's going to make you really fight the power and stand out is becoming friggin' successful. It's kind of mind blowing, but
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. What's going to make you more pirate than anything? Trying super hard and getting good at shit that you hate right now.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I mean, I feel like there are a lot of instances or pieces of evidence that back that. But I mean, you look at people. It's always been a thing in the tattoo industry, right? But you look at people trying to educate in the space. A lot of people are going to receive it really well. You always have some of those people that are like, you shouldn't be doing this, right? And could be a coincidence. If you ever look at that person's work, they're normally the ones that need it more than everybody else, you know? But yeah, totally, I get it.
Yeah, which is fine, you know?
I get it.
I love quality feedback is what I'll consider it because it's funnier that way. Of people who hate the idea of growth. Because that's all it is. Like when you break it down to brass tacks, I was called a grifter the other day, and it was like so I had to look up the real sincere textbook definition. It's like, oh no. That's not it. So then I started arguing like logic and verbiage and textbook definition. And it's like, and the fact I take the time to do these things is like, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull myself out of this conversation. But I think it's important to like, what is it that people really want? You know what I mean? Dude, 10 years ago again, and I'm gonna talk like an old balls tattoo artist for a second. 10 to 20 years ago, because it was counterculture, we were disruptors of social standards. Now, you want to disrupt the industry in which you've come into. So all you're doing is shaking your own tree. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, is it really come to that to where like you would way rather disrupt than to grow? And that's fine if you do because, you know, there's a place for everybody. But in the same note, like if you're not growing, you're dying. You know, I just read a fancy little cartoon meme the other day that was like, most people die at 27. They just wait to get buried till they're 72.
Yeah.
And it's no different for us than it is for anyone else. If you've given up and if you stop growing and if you go back to that, my most valuable resource is the art that I produce, but I'm still a grumpy old dude, you know.
Yeah.
That's fine too.
Yeah. Or a similar one, you know, most people just, their life lasts like a year because they just keep living the same life over and over again, you know? So yeah, but I mean, that's a great point. And, I don't know. I feel like so much of it just goes back to the mindset, you know?
Yeah. I think if people could just get really clear, like, what is it that you do want? Like, you make it really obvious what you don't want. You know, without a shadow of a doubt, these are the things I don't like. These are the things that I hate. These are the things that just aren't getting me to where I want to go. Okay, well, what do you want? One of the practices we go through, artists have negative self-talk. You know, the one thing that makes us the most valuable as creatives is the same thing that makes us underperform and have a lack of belief. Creativity works in both ways. It's the double-edged sword of being an artist. So what is it that you don't like about yourself? What is it you think that isn't performing? What is it you believe you cannot accomplish? And then write down the alternative. What would you prefer? What would you like? What are your reasons why? How important is it to you? So when this pops up, you have a documented list of what you would prefer to put your thought patterns into. We cannot control our thoughts. But if you want to be able to change the direction your life's going, you can control your habits.
Yeah.
You know, we're not creatures of thought. Thoughts are just inevitably going to happen. Thousands per minute. We're creatures of habit. So if you don't want to be negative, control your habits to create a level of positivity in your life.
Yeah.
You know, and that works again across the entire board. Maybe instead of going on and trolling people, to make it very obvious you don't have appointments beating down your door, maybe put a little bit of time into trying to get these appointments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have better things to be doing. If you feel like you're waking up late every day, or your body's starting to fail you, or you just don't have that it factor that's going to help you just know what you're capable of, find an alternative that's going to suit you.
Yeah.
You know, and whether we're talking marketing, branding, systems, money, art, it's at the end of the day, it's you. You're the problem. You're the solution. You're the one at the helm. Focus on you, because that's how everything else becomes possible.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Very, very, very wise words. Before we go too long, so we kind of talked about marketing. I kind of want to get into the sales side of things because similar to marketing, similar to being a business as a tattoo artist, like I feel like so many people don't even think about the inquiry process or corresponding with clients once they find you, right, as sales, but that's exactly what it is. And could be that the reason that it's not going so well is because you're not treating it like that. So, I mean, what are some things that you talk about as far as like, all right, client DMs you or clients emailed you. They know about our stuff, right? So now it's like, okay, what happens from there?
It is case by case based on where you are, based on how those inquiries come in. Because if you're a new artist and people, like generally if you're 3 years or under, maybe 5 years or under, people are going to be sending out a minimum of 3 to 5 messages to get the response that they're searching for.
Yeah.
So the way that you flip that script so that you're not going to give them the response they're looking for is you start inquiring a whole heck of a lot more so that you can collect the data that they're willing to provide. You know, sales isn't the close. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong is everybody has this used car salesman concept around it. So they don't want to know sales. Sales is cringy. It's not. The close is cringy if you don't have a good sales process. And sales is simply getting to know the person, what it is they're looking for, what it is they don't want, and getting to know them more of a personal level so you can lead them into making the best decision and for you to design the best art.
Yeah.
Eventually, with a good sales strategy, they will just ask, how do I book? The number won't matter. And this goes back to do you have more belief in your worth or do you have more belief in your value? Because your worth comes with a dollar amount. And so if it's your worth, you're just going to say, well, I'm $200 an hour. Like, well, you know, how's that performing?
Yeah.
If it's your value, then you're going to ask as much information as you can. You're going to get all the questions out there. And you're going to ask, is there anything else you think that would be important for me to be able to provide you with the best product and experience possible?
Yes.
By the time you seal the deal with that one, the number doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know? So really what it boils down to is don't sell you, just communicate clearly.
Yeah.
You know, we had a big sales, I want to call it a sales seminar, but we really went over sales super hard the other day. And the reason a lot of artists rush to the close is because they want to just sell themselves. They want to be able to sell a product. So they're like, here's how great it is. Here's everything I'm going to do for you. Here's what it is we're going to do. And rarely do they ask the right questions. You know, a huge component to sales is, can you tell me a little bit more about what this tattoo means to you? You know what I mean? I had a kid come in. I had never met him, word of mouth. It does not fit my ideal avatar. Like 21, 22-year-old kid, definitely looked like, what do I want to say? You can definitely tell that he's gotten a lot of house tattoos prior to.
Sure.
And immediately I came to judgment. Like price point's probably going to be off. What he wants probably isn't going to be within my zone of genius. But he showed me the most beautiful religious-based tattoo that he wanted to get for his grandma. And that changed my entire depiction, all right? First and foremost, we all judge a book by its cover. Don't pretend like your humility will outweigh the fact that you immediately create a belief around a person based on the way that they appear.
Sure.
It's a matter of how sincere you can be when you're collecting the contents of that book. So what I did was I just asked him why. A lot, obviously with more verbiage, but there was a Jesus, there was a dove, there was a Mother Magdalene, there was the pearly gates and all of it. And we walked down the entire tattoo. It's like, well, how does this relate to your grandmother? You know, okay, so she was a woman of faith. You know, this particular Jesus that he showed me was on her wall when he was growing up, and it's what he remembered. He's not a religious kid.
Yeah.
He just loved his family.
Yeah.
So then we started going back down. Okay, what does the dove represent? Well, she believed in peace, and he was a street kid, you know, like he did a lot of stupid shit when he was younger. So he wants the peace to resemble the peace that his grandmother tried to implement into his life. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So let's talk a little bit more about the pearly gates. So as he's telling me, like, he didn't believe in God until his grandmother passed away, and he realized, I have to see her again one day.
Yeah.
So he leaned into the faith. And I went through each and every element to be able to provide him with the best tattoo that just completely represents what it is he's looking for. And then because I am a man of faith, we start having these different conversations where I'm opening his belief systems on not only what's possible, but different ways to represent what it was he was hoping to convey. And when you do that, when you make it all about your client, it's way less about you, way more about your client, then not only does your client create their own know, like, and trust factor, but you can design the most beautiful art that they will be proudly wearing for the rest of their lives. So sales is 100% about them. The close is just a formality at the end of the process.
Totally. Yeah. And I think there's a common misconception, especially from people that don't think of it like sales, is that. Yeah.
Sorry, I went hard on that.
No, that was incredible. I loved it. But I actually think I was going to make this point earlier. I think it's a perfect example of that. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty easy to think of all these sales touch points as tips or gimmicks or tricks. But I mean, in reality, you and the client have the same goal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to tattoo them, but they want a sick tattoo and you want to do a sick tattoo.
Yeah.
And you want them to be stoked on it. Hopefully, if you're a good person, you want them to be happy with the tattoo, right? It's not all about you.
Yeah.
And so if you actually take the time to ask those questions, then, they're either going to book with you or they're not. But at least you've gone through that process to where either they're going to get something better than they initially thought, or it's not a good fit. And it's probably a good thing that you didn't tattoo them anyway, because then it would have been off,
Well, I think a lot of artists, they should know their lane. I think that's kind of where a lot of people have gone wrong is you hear a lot about people saying, well, you need to be well-versed. You should be able to do everything. Well, and that's fine. But are you going to be able to provide a 100% your attention, your passion, your purpose product? Or are you just being very well-versed and going back to the jack of all trades, but a master of none? What are you trying to create in this career? Because do you want to just tap bros, or do you want to create beautiful art for quality consumers?
Yeah.
That's a decision you have to make.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've taken more of an active stance even in my tattoo career, because if it was black and gray, if it was geomech, those are the things that I flourish at. And I love it all. I really do. But I'm starting to notice a pattern of the tattoos to where in the last third of it, I'm getting a little bit more space cadet-y. I'm kind of rushing a little bit more to be able to see this finished product. I get a little bit more excited towards the end. Then there's the pieces where I am so zoned in and so specific to the nuances of the beauty of this tattoo, because I know the story, I know the impact, I know what's at stake. I also know what the meaning and the message is. That up until that very last highlight where this person is screaming bloody murder and I'm in a beautiful zone of genius, it has my undivided attention. And that's important because this is about them now.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point in your career, that's when you've really made it. When you can be more selective, not because of your ego, but because of the love that you have for the thing that you get to do. And I want to make sure I capitalize get to do, because we don't have to do this. We're not so great and so blessed that we're the belle of the ball. You're welcome for me.
Yeah.
That idea. When you get to a position where you get to do these tattoos and you also know I can give this tattoo to somebody else who would do a way better job. That's what's going to make this industry and your career really flourish, because that's how you create a good reputation. That's how you create great word of 100%. Mouth. That's how you start becoming that 1%er. Going back to working with Peyton from Ink Admin. They work with a very specific clientele basis. You know what I mean? And no different than what they do to what we do is if Ink Admin worked with everyone, their success rates would be diminished solely because of a lack of productivity, success rate, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So if they work with everyone, they speak to no one. Where because they're very specific of the studios they'll work with, or the artists they're willing to work with, their success rate skyrockets. No different than an artist. If you're willing to work with everybody, not all of your art is going to carry a good reputation with it. Or when you work with a specific individual, you have a much stronger likelihood that your reputation will precede itself and you're starting to create a really good brand awareness and brand authority in your community around this thing that you love to do. Why wouldn't you want to do more of the thing that you specifically love to do?
Yeah, totally. This is one of those things that I feel like is a little bit different for different levels because overall, like I think most artists have the goal of like having something that they specialize in. That's what they love to do. But I've also seen it kind of go the other way where, you know, especially if an artist is not busy and there's tons of stuff that they can do, but they turn their nose up at so many things because it's like, it's not this one specific thing that I do. And that's fine. Yeah. But it also depends on your goals, right? If you want to be able to pay your bills, can you do that with 2 tattoos a week? Maybe. Yeah. Can you do it with 5 tattoos a week? Probably. And also it's building that clientele to where like, you know, you get enough people in the door, maybe it's not the exact thing you want to take on, but as long as the quality of work is good enough, I'm not saying fuck people up, right? Yeah. But as long as you've got them in the door, you can have them come back for a piece in the future. That's maybe your lane. Or again, going back to that sales process, if you can tweak their idea to where, and it is going to be a better product, right? Yeah. If it's your shit, if you can learn how to guide them toward that, then again, it's not gimmicky, it's not salesy because they're going to be better off for it. Too. Yeah. So I do think there's like, it's a little bit varies from person to person. And there's like that fine line there between like being responsible and being like.
I do need to preface what I was saying on that is that doesn't mean start that shit now. You know what I mean? Do not cut off the hand that feeds, but inevitably you can and you will get to that point. Now that doesn't mean that you're pigeonholing yourself for this one thing. But it does create a lot more trust around the thing that you currently love. As an artist, let's all just accept the fact that inevitably we're going to get burnt out on doing the one thing and we're going to make pivots. But that's when we realize we don't have to rebuild what we do or a clientele that we have to rebuild. We just innovate. We just pivot. Yeah. You know, and I think that's kind of the nice part about building trust is clients may come to me for black and gray. If I announce tomorrow that I want to convert the same beauty and the same nuance to the detail, but in an Art Nouveau style, could I convert my clients into allowing me to do that? Or would they go up to bat for me to be able to create a reputation for their friends who may like a bit more of the soft, elegant approach to the same level of realism? You betcha. You know, and again, with me tattooing for 20 years, I've been there where there's no way I'm going to say, I only do neo-trad. Or back then it was like new school because otherwise I was going to starve and die. Yeah. So not really like, don't want that. Not really an option. But inevitably you do get to a place or you should want to get to that place unless you're doing the same day every day for the rest of your life. But it all depends upon where are you getting your inspiration from. You know, because inspiration and motivation are huge terms that people use, but both inspiration and motivation are external. But with enough of them and enough action behind them, all of a sudden you become that creative that you know you're supposed to be, and you become disciplined so that the dial starts to move. Case in point to all of this, I'm a dreamer. I'm an optimist. I believe everyone is capable of everything. But that decision's up to them. You know what I mean? They could pay me as much money as they wanted to. They can go to every single seminar they could ever imagine. And if they are not adjusting their belief, none of it's going to happen. Of
course.
You know, and it's easy to be negative nowadays. Yeah. You know, no matter what you look at, no matter what you think, no matter what you do, there's something that's trying to navigate you in more of a negative direction, you know? And again, it's making it about business. Super off brand. You know what I mean? If you're a negative person and all you believe in is the doom and gloom, the sad stuff, the identity politics, the misery, if you're making everyone a charity case just so you can get them in the door, that's only going to be who you become. If you really want to be able to adjust, if you want to be able to create a successful business, if you want to do the art that you love, if you really want to change people's lives through the art that you create, you have to be able to cut off all of the negativity. I just put out a piece of content the other day that upset a bunch of people, and I enjoyed that. It was pretty much like that. Everybody always likes to ask, what do you think you're better than everybody else? Roundabout way, kind of. Not everybody else, but it's not from a sense of arrogance or ego. It's you grade out. I would way rather believe that I've just outgrown certain circumstances, certain situations because of the amount of work I was willing to put in and all the negativity I was willing to eradicate than to stay in that negativity to protect other people's feelings, knowing that I left a bunch of really cool opportunities on the table.
Yeah.
You know, I circled that back into personal development and about me because I thought that piece of content was really funny. But I think it's important to kind of realize, like, it's, as a tattoo artist, what do you do in being comfortable?
Yeah.
You know, like, it's kind of a, like, is that what you're here for?
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing in an industry like this? You just, I can't wait to just kind of be comfortable. Like, you're watching your 401k and waiting for your retirement plan to kick in. Like, no, that's not what any of this is.
Right.
You're in the wrong place. I was talking the other day about, like, a lot of people are becoming more like Starbucks baristas or cubicle job employees than they are like people with grit, resilience, drive, and belief.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it requires. But then success is new counterculture. You need to be able to put all those things into the business that you discuss on a daily basis. Every time I open my phone, I see you doing your thing, talking about business systems.
I talk a lot.
We get along there. And it's beautiful because sometimes you got to Stockholm Syndrome people into believing that shit. You know what I mean? And that's really what it boils down to. Every time they open their phone, they need to hear it. They need to get so agitated about it that it becomes a talk track in their own heads. That's how you're going to get them to start to change.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. And, you know, to circle back to your earlier point, there are some people that they don't want to hear it. Yeah. They never will. That's totally fine. Yeah. That's the way, you know, you talk about qualifying people. That's how I qualify people with my content. I'm like, if you hate it, fine by me. You know, you're not, that's not who it's for. You know, it's for people who actually want to believe that they can be better, they can do better, and that they can get whatever it is that they are trying to get out of this career or just in life in general. Yeah. You know,
how much do you think like just attitude as a whole plays a part in that?
I think it's so huge. One, I think this is just something I think is important in life in general is knowing that, like, you don't have it all figured out and that you have more to learn, because I think the second that you feel like you're the shit, then that's when you start to go downhill. And I think that applies with art, business, anything, right? And then, you know, have you seen the episode that we did with Ryan Roy?
I believe so, yeah.
Shameless plug. It's a really good one. But there's one part where he's talking about, you know, the industry being oversaturated. He says, I won't say that it's oversaturated, but it is more saturated. But, you know, he talks about taking that information in and then having a mindset around it. And you can do whatever it is you want, but whatever belief you have, it's like, does that serve me or not? And I think that's so important, because when something doesn't go our way, we can blame all the external factors we want, or we can say, oh, this is never going to work out. This is going to suck. I'm just going to have to sit in it for a while. And that might be true, but also, like, what does that do for you? Yeah. Like, why would you just want to just accept mediocrity or these external factors or whatever it is, when you can actually, like, I would much rather say, okay, no, I'm going to do something about it. And even if I fucking try and nothing happens, then at least I tried instead of just sitting there, you know? And I mean, and I do think that there's, like, and especially in business, like, you do have to be able to take, like, a logistical, like, objective lens on things when you start dumping time or energy into something. Like, you got to be able to say, like, okay, is this working? Is it not working the way that I want it to? Yeah, because that's different, right? Yeah. There's a difference between, like, pivoting and then just stopping doing something. And so you do have to be able to have that lens of it. But I think that's just so important with everything. It's like, you know, you can believe something about something, but also, like, what is that doing for you? Is that serving you?
From an outside perspective, because I always know my answers, but there's always so many different ways to make an omelet or whatever. A lot of that comes from belief systems, and a lot of people's belief systems are hardwired into them neurologically. You know, like, so how do you believe artists need to really start having more of a productive approach to shifting their belief systems in real time so that they can change their attitude, because you can't just change your attitude. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There has to be an approach to it.
I mean, I think it goes back into what you were saying earlier. I mean, I think part of it's a discipline thing, and I think part of it is just acknowledging what you want.
Yeah.
You know, do you want to make money as a tattoo artist, or do you want to have a certain clientele? Do you want to specialize in one style? Whatever that is, whether you do or not, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But this is this is where the discipline comes in, because it's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
I like going to the gym. A lot of people don't like going to the gym, or like starting a diet.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to start a diet? No. Nobody wants to be on a diet, right? But you want to look a certain way. You want to lose weight. You want to gain weight, whatever it is. And so the want for that thing needs to outweigh the lack of want for all the things that you have to do to get there.
Yeah.
And so I think you just have to be able to acknowledge what that is, and then really how bad you want it. Because if you want it bad enough, you'll do all the shit that you hate to get that payoff. But if not, you're not going to do it. And that's fine. But you also have to be accepting of like, okay, this isn't what I really want. So let's figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just doing the same shit every day, and that just sounds miserable. A lot of people do that. But
Yeah, well, I think one thing that kind of eradicates the need for immediate gratification is the value in your reason why and why it's important.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
that in itself, like a reason why can adjust. You know, sometimes we forget the initial reason why we started doing something.
yeah, and it does. Yeah.
But the level of importance to it, I think, is extremely valuable. You know, and that's something that I'm still kind of working back through. I have a pretty specific schedule, and sometimes even I become autopilot in those things, and I really have to re-gauge in quarterly edit and audits. Are these things equally as important? Why are they equally important? And is this still what I need, or have I been able to innovate or pivot on those things? And even in my starting stages, like backstory, like I said earlier, ex-drug addict, ex-alcoholic, been in prison, done all the degenerate cartoon character tattoo artist things you could imagine. I was that guy.
Yeah.
You know, and so where did it start? I just started in prison. But adjustments had to be made where I just had to make a promise and keep a promise.
Yeah.
You know, that was the first time I was obligated to get to know myself. I didn't have anybody to impress. There was nobody there I wanted to show off to. I wasn't put in a position to where I was given the opportunity of just going back to my normal state. So I'm not recommending go to prison and your life will change. What I am saying is
You could try it.
I mean, I'm not voting it out. I'm just saying maybe not. Don't take the active approach of let's go to prison. You know, it's, you know, there was video games. It's not all that bad, but that's a whole different podcast. Point being is validation and attention and all of the things that keep us in mediocrity. They don't get us anywhere. It's not a real resource. It just helps us sleep a little bit better at night, but it still brings us back to the same place. So what I've come to find is this life is such a fucking beautiful thing, you know? And I noticed that I always drop an octave when I get into these power speech moments, but as an artist,
Dude,
okay,
I'm zoned in.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the energy a little bit. As a tattoo artist, yes, you were cool as shit. Let's all accept the fact that being a tattoo artist is cool. However, as people continuously come into the industry and we can't figure out why they're coming into the industry, then it takes away a lot of the emphasis that we once had on it. So we have to be able to understand and remind ourselves why this was important, why this is ours. You know, because in 3 to 5 years, everyone is inevitably going to fall off the back end because things are going to get more expensive. You're going to eventually have to like go homeless, or you're going to lose access to a lot of the resources that we have. Tariffs are going to come in and make products way more expensive. You're not going to be able to buy these things on Amazon anymore. Everybody's going to go back under their boulders and become DJs like they were in 2018. It's going to be fine. But what are you willing to do to stand that test of time?
Yeah.
You have to know why it's important. Is tattooing for you? Might not be. And that's okay. Is it for you? Then do what the hell you got to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because being a tattoo artist doesn't mean that you're a robot. It needs to come with individuality. What are you going to do to create individuality? You're going to start creating some real momentum. You're going to move your dial Because right now, if you're redlining, like if you're just, flatlining, I don't know. What's the difference between a barista at Starbucks and a tattoo artist?
Yeah. Or
social media clout? Like, nah, it's not going to be that important forever.
Right.
So for some tattoo artists, last year wasn't the greatest.
Okay, but what's the solution?
Better tattoos.
Better marketing.
I was thinking better business.
Better everything.
So you can take classes on this?
No, you just do your apprenticeship and then figure it out.
Or we could create something.
What about a seminar with all three of these things?
We can go over tattooing, marketing, and how to run your business.
Yeah, and we could even tailor it to the needs of the artists.
How?
We can take applications and figure out their specific needs.
Yeah, we can make it super interactive and engaging. It'll be amazing.
This is such a good idea. Right, John?
Wow, so exciting.
So when should we do it?
June 27th to 28th.
It'll be 2 full days going over every one of these topics.
We'll share everything we know to find success in this business.
We'll see you there.
Can't wait to see you there.
I'm sorry. I wasn't listening. Could you repeat that?
Well, covered a lot of stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to get into before we kind of wrap up here?
I don't want the last thing that I say on this podcast to compare tattoo artists to baristas at Starbucks, but I also think it's an important thing to compare to. And out. Where's that? Yeah, man. I mean, to be honest with you, I truly believe that the future of tattooing, no different than any other industry, comes at the form of higher education, because the industry is not going to slow down. The momentum is not going to get back to baseline. I think it's going to ramp up. Obviously, anybody can give you numbers like we're currently at a $2.8 billion industry, projected at a 2.9 or a 4.9 and up within the next 8 years. The reason is because they already have gauged metrics of who's going to be investing and where they're going to be investing for that growth to occur. Otherwise, those numbers wouldn't just be made up. So higher education is going to be important. You know, look at any parallel industry. Every industry goes through the same growing pains. And eventually, the people who learned the most when they needed to learn the most are now the most successful in that industry. There's a reason why some artists who you knew 5 years ago have fallen off now, and it's because they were marketing to the wrong people.
Yeah.
You know, if you're marketing to tattoo artists, then get into the product production end of things. If you want to tattoo quality clients, know your client.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a huge difference.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. And, I think there's a lane for everybody too. Yeah, there's tons of numbers and stats out there. The thing that I always come back to, it's not numbers based at all, but if you go out in public, how many people out of 100 that you see at the supermarket that have good tattoos on them? Probably not. One or two, very, very few people. So like there are enough people to tattoo out there. And you know, that's also one of my gripes when people say that it's oversaturated. It's like, no, like we just like there's more to grow, there's more to do. And all of these things, like they might put some tattoo artists out of business, but also they might create more business for those tattoo artists and more tattoo artists. So it's to me, it's not something that I shy away from.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Bobby and I were talking about that when I did the podcast at the tattoo convention. Is like the question was, is there still meat on the bone? Yeah, the steak has just gotten bigger. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that there's no meat on the bone. It just means that the steak's gotten bigger, so it takes a different way to cook, cut, prepare, all the things.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And Bobby has he's got a lot of my favorite quotes, but one of my favorite quotes from Bobby is, you can't tattoo the whole world.
Yeah.
You know, if you would achieve a very high level of success, like Deanna, and I can say this because she's my wife, I can ask her out, but she tattoos like, 30, 40 clients a year.
Yeah.
Right? And that's it. Right. So at some point, like you're going to be doing well enough to where like there is going to be more to go around, So yeah, Bobby's got a lot of my favorite quotes, but that's one of them. For sure.
No, that was definitely a good, solid conversation. So I think the last thing, because it was a question that I had asked him, I think it was kind of profound, is to you, what is it outside of tattooing that helps artists become the most significant tattooers? Is it the tattooing that makes you feel fulfilled and the most successful, or is it other things outside of tattooing that give tattooing the opportunity of becoming successful?
I think it's that. And this is basically like what our whole mission, our whole business model is built around on at Eden. Because like to be a successful tattoo artist, like you do need to do well in business, marketing, sales, all these other things, right? And going back into the continued education stuff, like they've spent so much of their lives developing themselves as an artist, and you only have so much time to invest in all these other areas. Some people can do it really, really well, but if that is truly like what your goal, what your passion is to do like the best tattoos possible, and you don't want to touch all the other stuff, you're going to either have to figure out how to do it or get somebody else that does.
Yeah.
And so that's what we try to do here at Eden. That's what I've tried to do with Deanna, is like, we have them just focus on the tattoos, and then we can handle kind of all the other stuff. So I think being able to find a team or people to help you is something that can definitely get you to a higher level as a tattoo artist. And if you can't do that, you're going to have to figure out how to do those things yourself. And hopefully you can, but I mean, I know not just in tattooing, in everything, like if you can get somebody else that already knows how to do it or to show you how to do it, you're going to skip a million steps and it's going to be way, way faster.
Yeah. Okay. So your first question was, in what order is there a level of prioritization when we were talking about all the different things that I do? How does that work for you?
That's why I asked. No, it's super tough. And so like one thing that I have kind of been thinking about, because we've got two separate businesses kind of, right? We've got the studio side of things here at Eden, you know, our artists that do tattoos, and then we've got the educational stuff. And then within that, you've got a bunch of different artists. You've got my teachings, you've got Deanna's teachings. Like there's so many like microcosms. And so sometimes I am like, damn, like I hope I haven't bit off more than I can chew, because I look at both aspects of those and I'm like, we should be doing this and this. And there's just so much to do. I think that when I can find areas that there is overlap, like, for example, so like, you know, with the studio, like our target market is, you know, mostly people who want tattoos. And with the education stuff, our target market is mostly tattoo artists. But I've realized that outside of the tattoos that we're making, we're also providing a service to artists, and the product that we're selling in that sense is like, come work with us, you know, come teach a seminar with us, come guest, you know? Yeah. And so by doing that, we can hit the same markets with both of those things, right? And have them flow into each other. And then obviously helping make better tattoo artists, educating clients is a big part of it too. So when I get these crazy ideas, I'm like, let's do this thing. I always want to make sure that it doesn't take away from the mission and that it reinforces it, even if it's a little bit of a departure, because like one thing that I would not want to do is I wouldn't want to like open up a coffee shop next door, or I wouldn't want to open a cafe here, you know, because it's just like, sure, it'd be great for clients to be able to buy a cup of coffee before, but it's too different that I don't think it would add to what I'm doing. It would take away from it more so than that. Yeah. So.
It's it's important to know what is and what is not on brand. I think you're absolutely right. It's sometimes there's things that are just way off the mark, and I assure you, I have some real where the hell did that come from ideas that I would like to be able to implement. But I think this goes back to something that I had to learn the hard way. A lot of artists have a million half-built bridges without one taking them anywhere because we get too excited. But you can take all of those ideas and start to put them in like a chronological order where you get all of the results, all of the completion of all million half-built bridges only in the right order means you get to achieve all of them. And that's the difference between what you want, what you need.
Totally.
Because all of these things can positively impact the next, no different than like my family positively impacts my joy. My joy positively impacts my tattoo career because of my interactions, which then helps me positively impact the amount of things I can do in the force of focus to primal focus to podcast to going back into my faith and being able to like create more positive impact in that element. But I've had to do these things in chronological order. I can't do all of them at the same time. It is a physical impossibility.
Yeah.
So knowing what you want the big vivid vision to be helps you reverse engineer to know the right order to put these things in.
Totally.
And so that's how like you can either be a magician or a spectator, but either way, magic's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just, do you want to be the magician, or do you want to be a spectator and the guy who's like, Psh, I can do that?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, like-
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, man. Like with my faith and everything, I think we were all put on this planet to be in the image of God or through the universe. And with that being said, that means you're a creative. Do some creative shit, man. Like, you weren't put on this earth to do not a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
And as a tattoo artist, you've already got your foot in the creative door. What's stopping you from just getting creative as heck everywhere else and breaking through these limiting beliefs?
Yeah.
You know, like, being a tattoo artist still comes with some merit. You know what I mean? It still comes with a sense of pride, unless you are the active one diminishing what it is you're capable of accomplishing.
Yeah.
Because you too can educate. You know, just because you don't have EDU or like a cool name like Force of Focus doesn't mean you are not a leader.
Yeah.
There are always eyes watching. And if you're projecting doubt, you're leading something. If
Yeah.
you are being productive and positive, you are leading something. If you're teaching your clients how you can best serve them to be able to wear the art that they've always dreamed of, you are leading something. But until you are willing to lead yourself, you are inevitably going to stay exactly where you are. And no one will grow from what you do. And our position on this planet is for growth, not for stagnation.
I agree.
You know, so whether you're a person of faith, you believe in the universe, you rub crystals on your nipples, it doesn't really matter. Do it and then go somewhere with it. Manifestation is only going to help you produce a result if actions follow it. Period.
Yeah. Totally. Your voice dropped a little bit in that last part.
Yeah.
And I thought that was super profound. So I think that's a good place to end.
Okay.
Are you cool with ending
Yeah,
off?
run it. Yeah, dude. I told you I can rip, man. If you got until tomorrow, we can keep going.
Oh, dude, 12-hour podcast. Let's go.
That's right.
No, I think
Marathon session.
yeah, I think that's a great spot to end. And yeah, thanks for coming down, man. It was great chatting with you.
Absolutely.
One thing that I did want to mention too was, like, when I started following you, you sent me like a video message, and I thought that was like the coolest fucking thing ever. I was like, personal touch.
Yep.
Like, and also just reaching out in general. And so I don't know, I've just had a great impression of you right off the bat since that happened. It hasn't been too long now, but I'm super glad that we were able to connect and rap. And
I appreciate that. And it's for anybody, call this extra credit. If you want your clients to open up to you, and if you want to fast track your know, like, and trust factor, don't just send them a sup or looking for a tap, bro. Send them a video message. Say their name. Be super inquisitive, and it'll take you 30 seconds. You probably don't have enough followers coming in for it to waste too much of your time. If you want clients to have a know, like, and trust factor for you, look into your camera and greet them like a person, and it will change everything. I've done it for years now, and whether it's my tattoo, like my actual tattoo business, or if we have people like our admin in the tattoo studio doing it, it does gangbusters, you know. And it's not a sales strategy. You're being a person.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. All right. Well,
I appreciate
cool,
that, by the way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.